And we've talked about how this union or reunion of Uranus with Gaia, which is the Earth, taking place in about 2010, will fulfill itself in Aquarius and be the coming of the bridegroom for the bride, the coming of Christ for the bride, you know. Because the mythology surrounding these stars is identical with that which is written in the Bible. It's very interesting stuff. And I think what's interesting about it, too, is you don't have to believe any of it. You can't believe it. I mean, I can prove this part because it's astronomical. You can go to the planetarium in Ocean County College and prove that. That doesn't take any kind of faith. I mean, that's just reality. But as far as the impact it has on you, depending on when you were born and what sign you're under, who could prove? Who could prove? But on the other hand, listen. That's the important thing to do. Not to be afraid to listen. Not to be afraid to read. Not to be afraid to look. Not to be afraid to just take it in within yourself. If it doesn't sit right, it's no problem. But at least you looked, at least you heard what is a source of thought that may be prevalent in some particular area. When you close your mind down, the most beautiful statement I heard about that was given by a guru from the East who said, once you reach a conclusion, your journey's concluded. You'll never, ever be open to anything once you have decided, I've made up my mind, this is what I believe, that's it. Then you're never going to be touched, because if God himself walked into the room, you'll never acknowledge him because you've made up your mind. Don't make up your mind. Just leave yourself open, explore, read, go get books, look at TV, do whatever you have to do. Find all of the various things that people have said stay away from, and don't stay away from them. That's the most wonderful thing you can do. If your religious leaders have said stay away from that, be sure to go to it, because there's a reason they want you to stay away from it. And the reason they want you to stay away from it is, unfortunately, it might seem appealing to you, and that could cause you to lose your allegiance to them. Isn't it an interesting thing? And I find this in all aspects of not only religion, but business, whatever it may be. Say, a person wants you to know the truth as long as you find it in their way and believe the way they believe. They don't necessarily want you to find this truth outside of their little organization, because that takes the bucks away, it takes all of the shtick away. So they want you to stay with them and find the truth. Don't go outside of them looking for the truth. It won't happen. You can find it right in the New Age. Doesn't make any difference. People are mystical, spiritual, and you can write them. And I've had people say, I wrote to so-and-so about what you say, and he says it's good, but he said that we should follow, The point is, don't cloud your own minds with other people's opinions and my opinions or anybody else's. Find it for yourself. Let it sit within you and become truth, and it will, if it's right. Let's take a look then at this mighty planet, which is spinning in the opposite direction of all the other planets, coming across the universe. What effect does it have to those who live under that sign of Aries? Now, Aries is interesting because Aries in mythology, and Aries symbolically, is the pineal gland of the brain. Does it have any effect? Is it even legitimate to stand in a Christian church and say, can in any way, shape, or form this type of thing have an effect on you? Well, it says in Job 38, can you bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades? Pleiades is a star cluster in the constellation Taurus. Can you loose the bands of Orion? In other words, the Bible says, indeed, these things have an effect on you. Because they emit electromagnetic waves, they emit electricity, and your mind and your brain are complex organs of electromagnetism and electricity, and they pick these things up. And yes, you do. You pick up vibrations from these things. What Uranus does, according to the ancient mythologies, it causes upheavals. It causes revolutions in status quo thought. In other words, people all of a sudden start throwing down old ways of governments. And look at it. You're sitting in it, watching it all over the world. All over the world, upheavals. Just about every place you can look, there are people marching in the streets, and concepts that have been in stone for years and years and years all of a sudden come crashing down. Nobody stops to think. Oh, there's many people who do understand this. But for the most part, people who watch this on TV or go to church have no idea what's happening. What about the upheavals? The upheaval in Yugoslavia is an amazing thing. I don't know if you've been paying attention to it. But it's different factions of people, different religious factions, different political factions inside of Yugoslavia. And all of a sudden, they all want their own way. The Serbians don't want to follow the main government anymore. And the Croatians, they don't know what they want to. And so before you know it, you may have no longer a Yugoslavia. You may have 4 countries there. All of a sudden. Why? Bang! Because Uranus comes along and turns it upside down. Gorbachev doesn't know what the heck he's got. What has he got? All of these countries, the Baltic states, and then you got Russia, which is the largest country within the Soviet Union. They got a guy named Boris Yeltsin. Whoever heard of him? All of a sudden, he's standing up there and said, hey, the heck with all the... What's happening? Right there. And you can look and you can see it anywhere you go. And you see it in the Middle East, you see it all over the world, and you see it right here. And it is all of a sudden people coming to grips with authority, which has held them in bondage, and saying, no more. I won't follow it anymore. And it's the same with religion. The simple revolution that's happening in religion all over the country, which they call the New Age, is people saying, listen, I am not going to come in here and believe this stuff because you say I've got to believe it. I can't do that anymore. I will believe when I know the truth. And that's the revolution that frightens these people. That's called the New Age. Well, Aries here. Now let's look at this on the basis of the mythology of it, the workings of it, and don't believe anything. I don't want you to believe anything. I just want you to look at it. Think about it. Aries correlates to the instinct to become independent. There's an instinct within Aries, according to the ancients, of independence. I no longer want to be attached to that thing that I was attached to before. And so Aries becomes self-discovery. How can I some way locate who I really am because I'm starting to instinctively feel different from everybody else? And people that have a heavy impact in that Aries sign feel that way. And what happens here is all of a sudden Uranus comes, and you've been struggling trying to find your identity in the system. How do you fit in the system? How do you fit in the society? How do you fit in the job market? How do you fit in the education? How do you fit in with your own family, see? And all of these years you've been trying to figure this out, who you are, and here comes Uranus chugging along, starts affecting the right hemisphere of the brain, and all of a sudden now you've got a real identity crisis. Because this is starting to shake you away from all of the things that you were competing with before and starting to steer you in a new direction of identity. Because in Aries, desires, thoughts, they start manifesting like lightning. They're coming at you from all different directions. So Uranus comes and takes this type, and because of the instinctive urges, it leads the individual into a new direction of consciousness. A new direction of consciousness. If you are not actually experiencing Jesus Christ, if you are not sure that you have touched Jesus Christ since you've been alive, you've followed the wrong religion. If you are searching for some meaning in your life, if you are sick and tired of reading Bibles and going and listening to people speak, including me, you've got to break yourself. You've got to locate that key within yourself. You've got to instinctively raise yourself up to that area that Jesus Christ sent you and make a revolution. And go to any church, and including me, and say, I am not listening to you anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. I want to find truth. This beautiful planet Earth has got to be more than just a bus stop along the way to some place somewhere out in space. And it is. Beautifully created, beautifully constructed, magnificent oceans and mountains and animals and all of the beautiful things so that you can live forever here in a magnificent, magnificent way. Go to the Alps, go to the beaches of the Bahamas, whatever turns you on. But what do we say? This whole world, even in their songs, their gospel songs, this whole world don't mean nothing to me. I'm only passing through. And so what do? When you go to some place that doesn't mean anything to you, you're only passing through, you're illiterate. Because you don't give a damn about it. I heard a guy on TV the other day was talking of justifying animals and how animals have no rights and animals have no feelings. and we can kill animals, and we can abuse animals, because in the Bible it says, take dominion over the animals. You boob! What the Bible was saying, take dominion over your own animal nature. Otherwise, you have got some God up in some planet telling you, do whatever you want to those things. If he wants you to do whatever you want to those things, why did he give them feelings? Why did he give them the capacity to love? Why did he give them the capacity to be fearful? Why did he give them the capacity to be angry? Why did he give them the capacity to look for love? If he wanted you and me to abuse and do whatever we wanted to them, take dominion, he wants you to take dominion over the two-legged animal in here, not the four-legged animal. One of the most beautiful eye-openers I ever had in studying the Bible was in looking in all of the animal sacrifice of the Old Testament, and then I got to David in Psalm 40, and David says, animal sacrifice you did not desire. My ears have you opened. Finally, I have become enlightened. The animal that you wanted sacrificed was not out there in the field. It was in here in my mind. There's no danger from a lion. There's a lot of danger from us. So what happens in this particular situation here is you have an identity crisis when you begin to flow against this Uranus involvement. In other words, things are starting to happen. Say, things are starting to happen. There are many people who think I am some kind of a radical. Which is right. It's true. See, but they're listening. I know it, because I hear about people who listen, who wouldn't dare come in here. They couldn't dare come in here because they would have to admit in some way that there's something interesting going on here. They can't do that. Why? Because the ego won't allow them to do that. It's the same thing in here. See? But they're hearing it and they're listening. See? Because their youngsters are committing suicide and their youngsters are taking drugs, and all of the violence that has gone on with churches on every street corner and evangelists on every TV station, and all of this pathetic stuff that's been happening, and people have been hurt. What do you think Jesus Christ would do if he did physically come back, walk up, line up the great evangelists and bishops and ministers and say, is this what you have accomplished for the children and I told you to protect them? Are they all drugged? Are they all committing suicide? I mean, is this it? This is what I have left in your care? Huh? Well, that's what we've accomplished. Or most of it as a result of fear. So the discovery that occurs when Aries does not resist is the discovery of your own essential nature. Your own essential. Who are you? Look at you sitting here. Look at me. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm transmitting. You see this thing in the middle of my face? It's a transmitter. You know what that's doing? It's not saying words. It's vibrating the air. And you have little antennas. And your antennas are going, and they're picking up the vibrations. Just vibrations. I'm not really saying these words. These are vibrations. But when the vibrations, they vibrate little tuning forks inside your head. And it sends signals. And all of it becomes words. In other words, my transmitter is transmitting, your antennas are receiving. Huh? And I have two cameras right here. And they take color pictures in 3 dimensions. And you have 2 cameras. And you're seeing me. You have 2 cameras. You have your antennas going. My transmitter is going. And in the middle here, right up here, is a computer. IBM would eat their hearts out to get their hands on such a computer. This is in here. But let me ask you a question. Who is all the information going to? Your eyes aren't saying. You are. My mouth is not speaking. I am. Who is the I? Who is the essential I? Who is that essential person? It's not the physical. Say, your car does not know how to get home. You have to drive the car. When you get in that car and drive it, it becomes very intelligent. It can go to New York. It can go to Florida. It can go to the hospital. It can go anywhere as long as you are driving the car. Your body is a car. There is an essential you. There is an essential eternal I, you, which is inside of that. And that is when you plug this, when Aries plugs into Uranus, it plugs into its own essential nature. Uranus in Taurus. Much. Oh, baby. Huh? Yes, sir. I used to be. I'm not, but I mean, I know how to do it. Remember, I was in the Navy. I used to send home pictures. Joan has one. I had my bathing suit in Guam, you know. I knew how to pose for a picture. I'd put my hand. Guy showed me the trick. Put your hand underneath here, see? When you go like that, you pump that ass. Send pictures. All the girls, look at that. See? What is it? Taurus is the instinct to survive. It is the bull. What's the bull see? Red. Red. Red is the emotions of the bull. You are emotional. I heard that. That's why the Red Sea is red. The Red Sea is red because it means the churning emotions in your mind. Forget whether Moses went across the sea. Who cares? The point is you've got to get across your mind. The emotions. If you will lift yourself up like Moses did, that emotions will spread apart and you walk across on dry ground to the promised land. The emotions. That's why the devil's in a red suit. Why is the devil in a red suit? Emotions. Two horns, the power of the emotions of the devil. Always been that way. See? And so Taurus is survival. There is a strong sexual instinct in Taurus because it is survival. That's right. Laugh you will, but it's true. So Taurus is self-reliant, self-related, self-sufficient. And when you realize this, you have to put some kind of a halter on that. You know? There are people who will not listen to this message, who will look at me as a supreme nincompoop. Why? Simply because their ego says they have been following a particular way, and those people must be right. Say, oh, I don't want to hear about Hare Krishna. Oh, I don't want to hear about Shakyamuni Buddha. Say, those things are terribly offensive. But I'll listen to Mr. Swaggart, or I'll listen to Mr. Baker, or the other guy that sat in the top of the flagpole for $8 million. Okay. See, these people are holy people. Let me tell you something else. When I teach people about reincarnation, that's offensive. I don't believe in reincarnation. What do you believe? Well, I believe that if you sin, you go to hell. And you sit in a pit, in a frying pan, forever and ever and ever. And this is holy. See? This makes sense. This is good. I appreciate that. I can believe that. I can believe that little Claire. Come over here. Little Claire, come here. If little Claire does something wrong, she's going to fry in a frying pan forever.
Probably will.
You see, that's acceptable. But if, on the other hand, you tell people of the true nature that you work your inadequacies out and God gives you as long as you need and as many times as you need to work these things out in your life, that's not acceptable. And why isn't it acceptable? It makes a whole lot more sense than sitting in a frying pan forever, but it's not acceptable because the religions have said. In other words, they have said it's not. See? Job 38. Look at page 459 if you have one of those little Bibles. 459 in the Old Testament. Okay, the rest of you go to the book of Job. It's the book right before the book of Psalms. Page 459, the book of Job. And I want to show you the Bible which specifically says that these stars and constellations affect you. Sorry. I mean, I want you to totally forget about what they say and look at the Bible and believe the doggone thing. Job 38. Now go to verse 31. Can you bind the sweet influence of Pleiades? Pleiades is a star cluster in the constellation Taurus. And it is saying, can you put a halter around your own ego? Can you control your own flesh? Can you control the influences? Taurus, it doesn't make any difference. See, I don't really care. In the old days, I couldn't even talk about this stuff because I used to, well, what are they going to say if I mention Taurus in church, you know? Who cares? It doesn't make any difference to me anymore. See? It's in the Bible. It's in the book. Can you bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades? Well, you say, well, I didn't know the Pleiades has any influence on me. Yes, it does. Well, look at the next line. Can you loose the bands of Orion or Orion? You can walk out of this building and look up and see Orion any day you want to. Look at it. Look at it, and then look. For the first time, you'll see something the Bible talks about. There's Orion. There's Orion. It has an influence on me. Look at the next one. Can you bring forth Mazzaroth? You know what Mazzaroth is? Look it up in your Christian dictionary. You know what Mazzaroth is? Mazzaroth is the 12 signs of the zodiac. Or can you guide Arcturus with his sons? Arcturus is a constellation. Why has everybody taught you that it's evil to understand the effect of these things, yet the Bible speaks of the effect of these things on your life? So Uranus here correlates to the individual who's got to enter deep within himself in order to find a new powerful resource that he never had. Your powerful resource of Taurus has been given all of your life trying to combat the system, combat yourself, combat your family, combat the government, combat religion. And all of a sudden now, Uranus drives you deep inside of yourself to bring yourself the power that's to combat the sin, combat the evil, combat that which comes against the world. That's what a cosmic Christ is. I see this thing that, you know what disgusts me about Christianity? It is concerned with one thing only: my salvation. The hell with the kids in Iraq. Have you ever heard them praying for the people in Iraq? I think you told me, the one lady when the war broke out, well, I don't know what's going on, but I know one thing: I'm saved. I'm saved. You know, that took me right to the point where Jesus talked about the two guys praying there, and the one said, God, help me, I'm a sinner. And the other one said, God, I'm thankful I'm saved, and I'm not like one of those. And Jesus Christ said, that guy's as lost as he can be. It's all self-centered. I'm saved, I'm saved, I'm saved. Are you saved? I'm saved. Who's saved? What's saved? And look at the whole thing. The whole place going to hell in a barrel, and they're saved. But Uranus, which relates to the individual, drives you away from the society, produces people in Taurus whose individuality is magnified to help others. They're in the world, but they're not of it. And it produces a new value system in people in Taurus. And it's not what is a traditional value. It is what is an understanding of true value, which is the Christ within. Now, Uranus in Leo. The lion. And incidentally, there is the lion of the tribe of Judah is actually Leo. And it is the constellation Leo, and it is that which is Christ. Leo is the power of creativity. It is the ego, it is individualized, it is the ego most of the time that is filled with itself. I am the cat's meow. Is this something? Huh? Look at me. That's Leo. Tremendous stress that becomes apparent because the person wants to be totally in control of their life. You know, I will make decisions, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm doing it this way. Leo. It is typical a lion, the king of beasts. Rah, you know, gonna do things. What's the guy say? My way. You know, my way. But as Uranus then moves in to Leo, what happens? The energy that was self-centered rises like the sun. Because that's what it is. It is the sun. It is the pineal. It is the uppermost part. It rises like the sun and becomes tuned into Christ consciousness. So the power of the sun, the power of the Christ then can be released in Leo. And there's a tremendous liberation. Suddenly there's no longer a need to feel important, but now there's a need to understand what really is important. In other words, how do you feel? How can I help? What can I do now that I have found this sun within me? So the sun transforms whatever it touches, and when a person has Uranus and Leo and they raise themselves, they can actually transform others. It's like the people that you see. It's even like you people, some of you that have come in here, whose lives have been totally transformed, not by anything I've said, but by something that you found. Not by anything that you found in here, but by something that you found in here within yourself. You become free. Absolutely free. Uranus in Libra. And Libra tries to find itself, to compare itself. It's always evaluating, you know. I wonder if when he looked at me, did you notice, you know, that when he looked, he didn't look happy. I wonder if I said something that might have offended. Or I wonder if I look this way or if I do this, it will make the person, or it will make everything a little better. Constantly trying to weigh things. There's a deep need for completion by relating to other people here. Always trying to relate to other people. Always trying to be totally concerned with what you think. You know, never wanting to offend, but on the other hand, wanting to have its way. So just need to share, to listen, but really what that person is looking for is to receive. Okay. So in Libra, you're given this condition subconsciously upon receiving. I'm going to do something for you, but I've got another motive for doing it. I'm going to do for you, but I'm going to weigh this in the balance. I want to get something out of this. You know. I'll never forget one time, Joan and I were at a church. This was in the days before I understood this enlightenment of Christ consciousness. And we were at a church, and there was an evangelist we knew there. Some of you who are here may know. And at the end of the service, they said, come tomorrow night, and there's going to be the greatest miracle you've ever seen. You're going to see a miracle happen in this church with your own eyes tomorrow night. Be here. So I went Joan and I went to the evangelist. I says, hey, what's going to happen? I mean, you know, at that time I was, and the guy says, don't come. Don't come? He says, it's a fundraiser. And they're going to have a big fishbowl and load it with money, and that's going to be the miracle. See? So what was said? Come to see a miracle, in a way, half-truth, but with a deliberate attempt that I'm going to get something out. If I can get you to do what I say, I'm going to get something out of it. Some way or other, I've got to get something out of it. But when Uranus comes, all of a sudden Libra changes from me having to talk all the time, and I become a listener. See? I start to listen. You start to listen. When Uranus hits Libra, the people become great listeners. The person will listen unconditionally. And there'll be an unconcern about what I have to get back from you, and a total concern simply of one thing. I want you to be well. I want you to be happy. I want you to have nice things. I don't have to get anything back. I don't have to balance anything. So Uranus liberates Libra, and the individual just finds his own uniqueness within, and then allows that to move and touch other people. And he doesn't adopt the way of others in order to get something out of him for himself. And let's look at this last one. Uranus and Scorpio. This is an amazing thing. But you can look at this and you can study people in this sign. They're always concerned with their own limitations. There's always a sense of powerlessness. You know, I can never do anything. Nobody ever listens to me. There's an instinctive feeling of being threatened all the time. You know, everything's gone good. In other words, you know, many of you sat here, here you are, I don't know how some of you, 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, however old you are, and 84, and you've survived everything, and yet almost every day or every week has been, what's going to happen tomorrow or next week? Oh, there's always a catastrophe waiting down the line. How am I going to survive? How am I going to get through this? It's always the way it is. It never happens, but that's what your mind tells you. The feeling of being threatened, there's a fear of confrontation, and you're constantly looking at yourself. But here, all of a sudden, Uranus comes along. Scorpio and Uranus will look through this, and then you'll find a whole different type of person. And you'll come into a person who has submitted to meditation, who is that nature of person, and you'll sit with that person, and that person will be able to look right through you. Because they're no longer threatened, they're no longer deeply looking within themselves, and they start to look within, they start to look deep within you, they start to understand, they start to feel you, you start to feel them, they become extremely observant. And because they've moved away from the fear of their own limitations, and that's the thing that holds you back. The thing that holds you back even from meditation is you're afraid of it because you've been frightened by them. You're frightened by them. See, they told you you can open your mind to devils, yet Jesus Christ said, if you ask your Father for a fish, He's not going to send you a serpent. If you ask your Father for bread, He's not going to give you a stone. But it's easier to trust them because there's a mob of them, and we're always safe in a mob. You know what I mean? So there's a crowd of them, so they must be okay. See, I'll stay with the mob, because when you stay with Jesus Christ, you've got to isolate yourself away from them, and you're all alone, just you and Jesus Christ. And He says, yes, enter within yourself, seek within yourself for the kingdom of God. Raise your consciousness to the single eye. I've never done anything like this. See, you have to take a step. It's a tremendous step, because you have to separate and break away from everything that you've traditionally learned and all of the fears that they've put in your head, and you've got to step forward and say, I will do it. With all the things that Jesus Christ teaches about the inner kingdom, about the mind, about the consciousness, and I wonder if people will say, Jesus is Lord, and then I hear Him saying in the Bible, as you can find in Luke 6:46, He says, why do you call me Lord and not do what I tell you to do? Why do you call me Lord and not do what I tell you to do? But Uranus liberates Scorpio by allowing an examination of the cause and the basis of your fear. One of the most beautiful things that we did, and it lasted quite a while, I don't know exactly how many weeks, we did a whole study on Buddha. And he explained to us, because he was a master psychologist, Buddha was a master psychologist, he explained why we feel the way we do, why we become fearful. And what happens is when you're a little child, things are put into your head. Suggestions are put into your head. Ideas are put into your head. And they start to dwell in your subconscious. And then they come back and they raise themselves as you get to be an adult. And they come back at you and they frighten you. Things that you don't even know are in your subconscious. You don't even know you had a subconscious. But dwelling deep into that subconscious are all kinds of what they call demons. These are fears that have been put into your head by your family. They've been put into your head by religion. They've been put into your head in your school. All of these things. And they come at a time when you get to be, and even into an adult age. And you're filled with fear. You're filled with apprehension. You're filled with anger. You're filled with this feeling of worthlessness. Oh, I'm no good. Because you've been told for so long that you're no good, you believe it. And it comes out of the subconscious. Because who told it to you? They told you in church. In school, they say, oh, you'll never amount to anything. You don't study, you don't do this, you're never going to get anywhere. See? And then you go home with your lousy report card and your father beats you up and says, you're never going to amount to anything. And your mother says, you're never going to amount to anything. And then you did your first stupid thing and the cop picks you up and now you know you're never going to amount to anything. And all of this has started blasting out in your head. And all of a sudden you find that deep within the subconscious has risen, quote unquote, the demons, and the demons are nothing more than those own ideas and seeds that have been planted into your head by other people. And they're all there. And you know what? You can read about it. Jesus Christ walks into the cemetery. That means when Christ comes into your consciousness, which is a cemetery filled with death and decay, and what happens? All of a sudden, two of them come out of the tombs with demons. And those are simply that which comes out of the lower subconscious, because when Christ comes in, I don't mean, and Christ does not come in by you talking about it. Christ does not come in because you say you believe it. Christ comes in when you obey Him and you throw away the thoughts of your mind, practice the single eye, raise yourself within yourself up into the upper room of your consciousness. Christ comes in. And when that happens, those lousy, miserable thoughts which have been placed into your mind by other people suddenly come to the surface. And you may see it demonic. You may see wolves or whatever it is, monsters of any kind, but they've been driven out into the light, and that's when they can be driven over the cliff, into the pigs and back into the ocean and into absolute oblivion where they came from. And it all takes place, and it'll take place in your life if you'll have the guts to obey Him. And if you'll have the guts to thumb your nose to every doggone religion that tells you don't obey Jesus, don't go into yourself, don't enter within yourself, don't practice the single eye, do it, do it, do it, and you'll see it by its works. And as I say to people, well, you know, I read the Bible. But I look in the Bible and I see what's in the Bible. And I take the Bible literally. And I say to them, you do? Good. The Apostle Paul said, do not be a minister of the letter. Don't take it literally. Then take that literally. Jesus Christ says, unto you is given to know the secret of the kingdom, but to them that are without, everything is a parable. Take that literally. Psalm 78:2 says God speaks in parables. It says Jesus never taught but in a parable. Take that literally. Jesus Christ says if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Take that literally. Jesus Christ says the kingdom of God is within you. Take that literally. They can't. They take what they want literally, and they have created institutions of bondage. And I wish you could have been here Sunday night when we taught about the Dark Ages, because that's where all of that junk came from. It came from a time. Isn't that amazing? The origin of Christianity as you know it, not Christ, not Christianity as Christ taught it, the origin of it as you know it came from a period of history that history has termed the Dark Ages. You know why? Because they wouldn't allow you to think. And they still don't. They're afraid when you think. They're afraid when you read. They've got people who are against Buddha who don't even know what Buddha was. There are people against Hare Krishna. Why are they Hare Krishna? They're going to hurt you with their flowers? They have a flower in his hand. That's dangerous. Why would you be afraid? Why would you be afraid? Oh, well, I cannot have any strange God. Hare Krishna lived 5,000 years before Jesus was born. His name means Christ the Son. His mother gave birth to him as a virgin. The wicked king killed all the children 2 years and younger. He was raised by the shepherds. All of these things. 5,000 years before Jesus was born. Oh, well, I don't know about that. I don't really care who knows about that. That's historical. You call it mythology, call it whatever you want. But the story existed thousands of years before Jesus. The same story. And what does Jesus say before Abraham was? I am. It's that one river that flowed from Zion. It's that one river that has flowed from the eons of creation. It is that one truth that you have to plug into. But I'll tell you something. That's right. I'll tell you something else. I'll tell you one thing else too. I cannot do it for you. Nobody can do it for you. You do it totally of yourself. There's no church that can do it for you. There's no Bible that can do it for you. But when you'll practice what Jesus said, enter within and turn off the thoughts of the mind, you'll turn on the thoughts of God. You will turn on the God mind within you. And you can prove it only to yourself. But it works. And for the first time in your life, when you've done that, you can truly say Jesus is Lord, because you will have obeyed and done what he said to do. Seek within yourself for the kingdom of God. Next week we're going to look at Uranus and